Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We are so pleased you're all here today. I'm Laurel Frischman, and this morning, I'm so happy to be your worship associate for today's UUCC service. We welcome all of you. Yes, if you've been here before, yes, if this is your first time, absolutely. If it's been a while, of course. Welcome. If your heart is filled with joy, if your heart is breaking, or if you are somewhere in between, you are most welcome, and we are delighted you are here today. And we are so pleased to welcome back our beloved Bill Heavlin to the UUCC pulpit. Today, Bill delivers a new sermon, The Sacred Conversation, exploring the power of covenantal listening. And for after the service today, Bill invites us to compose our own questions that invite deeper conversations. So I hope you stay on Zoom for our breakout sessions after the service. And now our opening hymn this morning is We Are. It is number 1051 in the UU Teal hymnal. It's written by Dr. Yise Barnwell, who is slightly famous in UU circles for her ability to draw out others into deeper conversation. This version is sung by the First Unitarian Church of Oakland and members of the Live Oak UU Choir. So now please rise in body and or spirit and add your voice or just listen to this beautiful hymn, We Are.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born,
This is our UUCC Chalice. I will light the flame. Now, please join us in reading these words by David Breeden, entitled Justice, Meaning, and Purpose. We light this chalice, remembering and honoring our own tradition and celebrating the rich diversity of traditions among us. As we search for justice, meaning, and purpose, may we remember that justice, meaning, and purpose live first in deeply listening to one another. Now, Laura will guide us in joys and concern.
Life today lends itself to many ups and downs as we navigate through each day. Sometimes sharing the high points with others can bring joy, and sometimes sharing the hard times can be a source of comfort. In a moment, we'll play a video where we'll invite you to share your joys and concerns. While the video is playing, please feel free to share your joys and concerns using the chat window and to read what is shared there by others.
One of the ways we create our beloved community is by sharing our own joys and our concerns with one another and finding support from our community. At this time, we invite you to click the chat button at the bottom middle of your Zoom window. That brings up a window in which you can type in any joys or sorrows. As you do so, we will hear Vera Vandershock play Lagrima by Francisco Tárrega. In these times of reflection and renewal, let us remember that it remains important to reach out to one another when we feel the need and to accept being reached out to. May we find comfort in knowing that we can share our joys and our concerns here among us.
A lot going on the East Coast. Our thoughts are with those whose hundreds of thousands of people out there making their way through the severe icy storms moving through their neighborhoods right now on the East Coast. We have the Olympics going on, and I'm grateful for all the athletes of all over the world who can go and pursue their dreams. And we hope that they enjoy their time and are safe as they play their games. But currently the world is witnessing some confusing and dangerous games being played at the borders of Ukraine. We can only hope calmer and more level minds will prevail to avert conflict in this part of the world. We'd like to acknowledge the passing of Thich Nhat Hanh on January 22nd. Thai, as he was known by his followers, was a monk of global influence, a poet, and an author of over 100 titles in English. He was exiled for 40 years from his home country in Vietnam because of his peace activism. And today, in this moment, we discover ourselves in grave need of more peace warriors and are inspired by Thai's life. For the joys and concerns shared publicly today, may we hold them with love and care. For the joys and concerns that may remain unspoken in the recesses of our hearts, these too we unfold with love, with care. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our worship leader today, Bill Heavlin. Bill is integral to the production of UUCC's online Zoom services, taking on every role from switching slides to snuffing chalices. At work, Bill is a research statistician. At home, Bill hikes the coastal trails paints in watercolors, as you can see in this slide, an original by Bill, and feeds wild birds. Before Bill delivers his sermon, he has a wonderful poem to read to us. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Laurel. Yali Suida Camara is a Sierra Leonean American writer, educator, and researcher from Oakland, California, and the 2022-2023 Poet Laureate of Cincinnati. She is currently completing her dissertation in creative writing, poetry, and English literature at the University of Cincinnati. As this poem suggests, she is at the beginning of an extraordinary life. And this reading was much improved because of research by Tom Devine. Be Sedu by Yali Subida Kamara. While sipping coffee in my mother's Toyota, we hear the bird call of two teenage boys in the parking lot. Aye, one says, Be Sedu, the other returns. As they reach for each other, their cupped handshake pops like the first fat firecrackers of summer. Their fingers shimmy as they're solving a Rubik's Cube just beyond our sight. Moments later, their schwins head in opposite directions. My mother turns to me, revealing the milky John Waters mustache thin foam on her upper lip. What did dem ben say? Bisedu? Nar English? She asks, tickled by this tangle of new language. All right. Be safe, dude. I pull apart each syllable like string cheese for her. Oh yeah. Dem nar real potty. She smiles, surprisingly broken by the tenderness expressed by what half my family might call thugs. Be Sedu. Be Sedu. Be Sedu. We chirp in the car, then nightly into our phones after I leave California. Be Sedu, she says, as she softly muffles the rattling of my bones in new brown sobriety. Be Sedu, I say years later. Her response made raspy by an oxygen treatment in the ER. Be Sedu, we whisper to each other across the country. Like some word from deep in us somewhere, too newborn pure for the outdoors, but we saw those two boys do it in broad daylight under a decadent, ruinous sun. Be Sedu. Be Sedu, we say, Be Sedu, and split one more for the road, for all the struggle, tumble, drown. Be Sedu, we say, to get on the good foot. Get off the phone, tight like the bulbous air of two palms that have just kissed. In the third grade, my best friend was Paul, the middle child of a strict Catholic family of 7. One day, on the way home from school, Paul decided to be bad, purposely bad. He stomped really, through some rain puddles. In retrospect, I think those puddles inspired the whole bad thing. And in the absence of puddles, he walked on the grass, on people's lawns. Then Paul announced he was going to pick some flowers. From lawns, he picked some handy dandelions, yellow buttons on delicate green stems, to which he added lilacs. We don't have lilacs around here, but lilacs are lavender cluster flowers that grow on shrubs, lilac bushes. And then, with this ad hoc bouquet, he announced he was going to talk to strangers. To an unknown silver-haired woman leaning with a trowel in her front yard, Paul went up and said, "Hi." "Oh, hello," she replied. "Are those for me?" she asked, smiling. "Thank you." She reached for the lilacs and dandelions, which Paul released, plopped into her watering can. The moment just hangs in the air. Then Paul broke off to run away. On the sidewalk, loudly. On the sidewalk. I distinctly remember him running on the sidewalk, and I ran after him, in his footsteps, trying to not step on any cracks in the sidewalk. I distinctly remember trying to not step on any cracks. Because talking to strangers can be scary. Really, my whole life has been talking to strangers. I settled into my future career, statistics, rather early, in different phases, working with clinical psychologists, chemical and electrical engineers, with computer scientists, geophysicists. I'm always challenged to talk to people educated differently, thinking differently. Indeed, sometimes ambivalent about my value, incremental or otherwise. In Peter Gallison's History of High Energy Physics, that's big cyclotrons, linear accelerators, and so on, he observed the necessary partnerships among disjoint professions. Mainly, Gallison describes theoretical physicists in charge conceptually, interacting with electrical and construction engineers in charge practically, constructing big physics science stuff. Gallison framed these partnerships by the linguistic theory of trading zones. So I guess I better explain that. At the outset, a minimal set of shared phrases, simplified grammar, just enough to get by. Linguistically, this defines pidgin. Over time, a fuller hybrid language emerges, a Creole, with words and grammar conveying complex ideas, indeed, with native speakers. Pidgin versus Creole, both languages of the trading zone, with Creole representing a full-fledged hybrid language. Bisedu. That's a poem expressing the complex emotional history that makes up a Creole. In 1961, the Unitarians and Universalists merge. One frame for this merger marries two cultures, and one of them, over time, dominates, wins out, fixes the other. Now consider this more productive frame. These two U's pick partners for a trading zone, mutually benefiting by the exchanges. By analogy, the Unitarians sit adjacent to English, philosophy, and political science, recognizably departments of the liberal arts, humanities, and science colleges, all in the Western academic style. Book clubs, social action, coffee. Ooh, someone said coffee. Go Stanford Cardinal versus the Universalists, who delve with comfort into the traditions of the East. Yoga, mindfulness, meditation, ecstatic dance, Sufism. In this frame, the UU merger seems more like choosing to talk to that interesting and intriguing person across the room. 2 or 3 generations later, this conversation continues. Just for contrast, my born into faith tradition, that's the Denver Broncos. We palm slap and cheer, hot dogs, corn cobs, Coors, the wave. All very holy. Also rather mum. The ethical tradition implicit in US high schools is you root for your team. This is our lowest common denominator of cultural heritage. Root for your team. The other is the competition. And a rule broken is not broken if the ref doesn't see it. Versus Unitarian Universalism. Its language is a Creole, ever expanding, routinely incorporating novel and complex ideas. Unlike the Denver Broncos, who just swap out quarterbacks in search of Messiah. Which brings us to UU wisdom. Talking to strangers. I mean, listening really, to those not quite like us. We listen, repaid by the blessings of new perspective. I want to pause here and organize these threads of thought I've spilled and tangled and strung out into a couple of yarn balls. On one hand, you have that core ethic we've learned since at least high school. Root for your team, which may or may not be the Denver Broncos, which may or may not be this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Coast-Side community. The ecological version of this same idea is that only one species can inhabit any given ecological niche. One example of this, the COVID variant Omicron is squeezing out Delta. Another example, the Trumpist takeover of the Republican Party. One niche, one species. The linguistic version of this idea is standardizing a language so there's a single grammar, spelling, and standard accent. On the BBC, that's the Oxford accent. In the US, it's Chicago. This yarn ball is all about purity, pure types with its presumed superiority and power. Pure types, presumed superiority like this white yarn ball. By the way, I hope no one is upset that I am calling this ball of culinary twine a yarn ball. This other yarn ball, on the other hand, draws from ecological theory. Traced to at least chapter 4 of The Origin of Species and Charles Darwin. He said diverse ecosystems are healthier ecosystems. This oldish idea, because Charles Darwin is oldish, which by the way is called the Darwin effect, is only now shaping forestry management, where forests with a multiplicity of tree species are encouraged for the health of the trees themselves, for the animals and plants that reside within them. Diverse ecosystems are healthier ecosystems. Hence our slideshow theme, Fields of Mixed Wildflowers. Diverse ecosystems are healthier ecosystems, more resilient. Oh, I'm repeating myself, so this idea must be important. In agriculture, there's renewed interest in avoiding monoculture, single crops, which deplete the soils, require more fertilizer, capture less carbon, reduce bee populations, etc. The alternative practice is diversified farming, intercropping, and so on. This improves the soil enough to be relevant for climate change mitigation. The linguistic version of this same yarn ball of an idea embraces the trading zone and the Creole spoken there. That is, the emergence of hybrid languages, borrowing concepts from our trading partners, creating a healthier, more resilient religious community. Certainly offering UUCC services in this pandemic over Zoom has plunged us into a trading zone. And Bisedu, a word sprung from multiple cultures interacting. Creole expresses concepts, emotions born in this trading zone. Another example, the UU term of art, beloved community. As a concept, beloved community came to UU through Martin Luther King Jr. Here's another. Hinduism, or yoga if saying Hinduism seems unsettling, calls out 4 paths for religiosity. There's karma, doing good deeds, raja, involving meditation, jnana, studying texts and scriptures, and bhakti, worshipping by ritual, singing, dancing, and so forth. Social action warriors, their karma. Me, a reader of books, speaker of thoughts, I'm jnana. Such a vocabulary describing different religious styles enriches us all. Such words allow me to recognize those with a style similar to mine and to accept and delight in those with different styles. 4 kinds of trees in the Hindu forest, and more than that, actually. This incorporation of karma, raja, jnana, and bhakti into our language offers a frame for contemplating difference. Not a bad way to formulate a UU worship service team, by the way, representing each style: bhakti, raja, jnana, karma. A UU service team as an ecosystem, not as a pure form. I have personally experienced this kind of fourfold team, by the way, and it turns my heart outward. Conversely, rejecting such words as foreign or not UU has the practical effect of inhibiting UU understanding of both ourselves and others. So be patient with others' religious language. Another UU bit of jargon is covenant. Covenant is also borrowed. Covenant comes from Judaism and Christianity. It describes the ongoing and evolving relationship between God and humankind. The Jewish covenant is not a bargain, a contract, a handshake, a deal struck with God, because you don't make a deal with God. Covenant represents the open-ended commitment by the Jewish people, one to be endeavored over, to be labored over. If you read the Bible as literature, who are the main characters? God is one. And all those humans begetting in the Middle East are the other. You can quibble about whether humans get better, but in the Bible, over the full sweep of the narrative, God softens, lightens up. Covenant represents the open-ended commitment for both parties to improve and to refine their relationship. UUs have adopted this idea of covenant to express the idea of an ongoing process and struggle toward ever more right relationship between and among humans and groups of humans. This shift from humankind and God to humans with one another, this is an example of Creole, a linguistic twist that sometimes happens in the trading zone. Someone objecting to the use of covenant for dictionary reasons because of the term's association with God, such objections, made in the name of purity, have the practical effect of suppressing the concept itself. So let's just pause here to imagine how this UU concept of covenant might shape our conversations. First, such a conversation becomes not a debate whereby we seek to persuade someone to our position. The purpose of such a conversation is not to stroke someone's ego. The second, don't be too picky about the words your partner chooses. This is the nature of the trading zone. Some words are known to one and novel to the other. For the example, someone might use the word soul, but if you don't believe in that concept, just hang in there anyway to hear out the complete thought. And thanks for letting me say Yana. Third, the hard work of conversation is listening, really, because we more or less know what we think and believe, or think we do, but we don't fully know that about our conversational partner. Fourth, it's important to distinguish between the text of what we say and what we truly mean. I call this the ever ongoing incompleteness of language. To quote contemporary poet Maxine Skates, and when I said words were just words, I meant that they can never entirely say, no matter how hard we try. They are the reason we keep trying. By the way, this quote is from her poem, An Argument. So fifth, in such listening, we must also listen for the meaning under the words. At one recent interfaith meeting, someone asserted that the Episcopalians were the first to be welcoming to gays. So, as it happens, from the viewpoint of history, UUs were ahead by about a decade. From the viewpoint of covenantal listening, proper response might simply be to remain curious about the emotions or experience of becoming accepted by a religious community. That statement about the Episcopalians implies a past injury and perhaps suggests experiencing acceptance. From the much beloved and recently departed Buddhist leader Thich Nhat Hanh, when another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within himself, and his suffering is spilling over. He does not need punishment, he needs help. That's the message he's sending. Now, many UU's journey includes some religious trauma, which can be triggered by religious references. To this same point, I call attention to the nonviolent communication model. It helps people connect with themselves and others through empathy, communicating in a process involving observing, identifying feelings, identifying needs, and making requests. Requests. So now to say something really subversive. It's not hard to open a conversation with statements about the weather, the season, small talk really. Researchers Amit Kumar, Michael Cardis, and Nicholas Epley did this experiment. Instead of small talk statements about the weather, they had people open to strangers with questions like, what are you most grateful for in your life? Or, and when was the last time you cried in front of another person? Probably the tone was not that tone. These researchers discovered that people underestimated how happy those conversations would make them. These results were consistent among college students, online samples, strangers in parks, executives at financial services firms, introvert, extrovert, men, women, in person, over Zoom. You'll likely underestimate how you'll feel after risking a deep conversation with a stranger. So talking to strangers might not be so scary after all. It's mainly our imagination. It's not all loud sidewalks, dropped lilacs, scattered dandelions. Now, this sermon about conversations, it doesn't seem right to end it except with some actual conversations. So I'd like to offer you all a bit of a homework assignment, a pop quiz, if you will. We're going to do something a little different and introduce questions now rather than at the end of the service. Could each of you sketch a deep conversational question that seems important to you? Maybe write it down even. And maybe say why the question is important to you. What question for a deeper conversation occurred to you today? Why do you think that particular question came to mind? And now let's gather some imaginary lilacs and dandelions while Tom Devine plays this beautiful piece by Robert Schumann of Foreign Lands and People. We'll check in after the service to hear what you've come up with for questions. As for the Denver Broncos, maybe next year. For all of you here today, like those two palms that have just kissed, be
Thank you, Bill, for reminding us of how important it is to listen with compassion and sincere interest. And as for trying out deeper questions, here's one. What does it really mean to give? This question has a million different answers from a million different individuals. Think about making a covenant with yourself to live life more fully by giving of yourself to the world you live in. Giving can mean a million things, but the easiest way to give on a daily basis is to offer a positive, inclusive approach to others, especially to those strangers out there, an approach fueled by love. We are certainly thankful for your generosity to UUCC in whatever ways feel the most impactful for you. Your generous giving of your valuable time, of your special skills, and of your voices are most deeply appreciated. And if you donate today, your donations help UUCC to continue, to endure, and to thrive. Please follow instructions for donations in the order of service. As your generous spirit moves you today, please feel free to contribute what you can to UUCC, either by check or online. The instructions for giving are also in the chat. While these collections take place, let's take a few moments to sing our UUCC hymn called We of the Coastside, music by Tom Devine, lyrics by our own Bill Heavlin, and voices from the UUCC choir.
We of the coastside, we care for our neighbors, seek for more justice and sing for more peace, open in heart and bring more love for all.
We of the coastside, we care for our neighbors, seek for more justice and sing for more peace,
open in justice and sing for more peace, open in heart and sing for more love for all. Justice and sing for more peace, for more justice and sing for more peace, open in heart and sing for love for all.
And now for some announcements. As always, we thank UU San Mateo for their administrative and professional support. We want to congratulate Tricia Dell for her election to the UUSM Board of Directors, and also wish to extend a special welcome to Paula Newgwood as their new administrative assistant. Congratulations. We are always happy to see our friends from the UU community of Lake County here today. UUCLC hopes to resume indoor services starting in April. In the short term, Gail Marquette continues to host the Coffee Hour and Freewheeling Symposium on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. You are welcome to join them on any Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at their regular Zoom meeting link listed in the UUCC newsletter or on the UUCLC's website. Please join Coast Pride, UUCC, and other faith partners for a talk by Bishop Megan Rohrer, the first openly transgender minister to be ordained by the Evangelical Lutheran Church. This will be on Sunday, April 13th at 2 p.m. Prior to Bishop Megan's talk, Coast Pride's faith-based partners are providing craft supplies to make Valentine's cards. After you register, Coast Pride will send you information on how to pick up your Valentine's packet, which contains craft supplies plus delicious goodies. Please check this past week's UUCC twice monthly newsletter for complete information, and you can register for the event on the Coast Pride website at coastpride.org. Join us on Sunday, February 20th, when Patricia Dell delivers a sermon entitled Facing the Truth as a Spiritual Practice, the Benefits of Staying with Difficulty and Uncertainty. As climate change rolls out before our eyes and unpredictable challenges persist within our families and in our communities, how can we learn to face hard truths and let that clarity shape our actions? Tricia will share her experience of accepting the uncomfortable feelings associated with difficulty and uncertainty and how they have supported her spiritual journey. Tricia is a recent and very proud shared pulpit graduate from the latest intercongregational class, co-sponsored by UUCC and the UU Fellowship of Santa Cruz County, and taught by Tovis Page and Catherine J. And now Dave will guide us in extinguishing the chalice.
Please join in reading these words by Elizabeth Sella Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now our closing hymn for this morning.
The closing hymn this morning is Building Bridges, which is number 1023 in the UU Teal hymnal, played by Joanne Schreiner and sung by Tom Devine, Linda Grace Frost, Becca Troxler, Sharon Davis, and Joanne Schreiner. So please rise in spirit, in body, and add your voice, or just listen to this beautiful hymn, Building Bridges.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmonies. Friends, we could make such sweet harmonies. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Thanks to everyone who contributed to this wonderful, enlightening service today. Thank you, Bill, for your broadening and enriching sermon. We also want to acknowledge our First Sunday production team, our outstanding music director, Tom Devine, our Sparky Chalice lighter, Dave Rakowski, Zoom engineer and video editor extraordinaire, Bruce Raffnell, who makes so many things seem easy, and our joyful artistic director, Noreen Cooper Heavlin, and our musicians. We were counseled throughout by music director, Tom Devine, who contributed the interlude piece and remixed our closing hymn. Thanks to the First Unitarian Church of Oakland for their rendition of the hymn number 1051. And thank you, Vera Vandershock, for your lovely guitar pieces played during Gathering, as our Prelude, and again during Joys and Concerns. And a big thank you to the singers from Mission Peak, Sharon Davis, Becca Troxler, and Joanne Schreiner, as well as our own UUCC choir and Linda Grace Frost. And a big, big, big thank you to all of you for participating in this timely service. Immediately following the service, Bill will create some breakout rooms. Maybe we can share the questions for conversation that Bill invited you all to compose, and feel free to bring up other topics. Breakout rooms serve as a safe place to talk openly and honestly, so let's all join in these breakout rooms. What is said here today stays here, and of course, thoughts and concepts we learn and are inspired by can most definitely be shared. Please be thoughtful of the time so that anyone who wishes to speak has the opportunity to do so. Have a very safe, happy, and grateful day. Be say do.